Welcome to this explainer. If you've ever just stared at a map of India and wondered how those incredibly intricate state borders were actually drawn, and maybe more importantly, who has the power to just erase them, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to completely demystify the mechanics behind India's internal borders. We'll look at how they're legally established in the constitutional rulebook, and then how they've been dramatically reshaped by the messy historical realities on the ground. Here is our quick roadmap for today. We'll be covering the indestructible union, how to redraw a state, the push for linguistic states, the 1956 reorganization, and finally, unity versus regionalism. Let's get right into it. Part 1. The indestructible union. To really understand the map, we have to start right at the top with Article 1 of the Constitution and exactly how it defines the nation. So Article 1 strictly defines India as a union of states. But what does that actually mean in practice? Well, the really critical takeaway here is that the Indian Union was not formed by independent states all sitting down and making an agreement to join forces. Not at all. The union was created centrally, largely just for administrative convenience. And because the states didn't create the union, secession is strictly off the table. A state has absolutely no right to suddenly decide it wants to pack up and break away. Which brings us to this absolutely brilliant constitutional paradox. India is an indestructible union with destructible states. Think of it like this. The nation itself is a permanent, unbreakable fortress. But the internal walls, the borders of its states, those can absolutely be destroyed, shifted, and totally remade. Section 2. How to redraw a state. If these states are indeed destructible, we need to look at Article 3 to see exactly who holds the eraser and the pen. Under Article 3, Parliament holds this massive, almost breathtaking unilateral power over the geography of the country. I mean, they can form a completely new state. They can increase the state's area, shrink it down, alter its boundaries, or literally just change its entire name. Basically, Parliament has the authority to completely rewrite the physical and nominal identity of any state within the Union. So, how does this actually happen? Let's look at the workflow. A draft bill for changing a state usually comes from the Ministry of Home Affairs. Step 1. It needs the President's recommendation. Step 2. Before making that recommendation, the President sends the bill over to the concerned state legislature to get their views within a specific timeframe. And Step 3. Parliament votes on it, and they only need a simple majority to pass it. Now, that sounds perfectly democratic and consultative, right? But here is the ultimate catch. Parliament is not bound by the views of the state legislature. Let that sink in for a second. Even if a state legislature entirely objects to being divided or having its borders altered, Parliament can just ignore their views. Once that feedback timeframe lapses, Parliament can push the bill right through with a simple majority, completely overriding whatever the state wanted. Part 3. The push for linguistic states. Having established that incredibly powerful legal mechanism, let's step out of the constitutional rulebook and into the gritty historical reality of the late 1940s. You see, when India first integrated its princely states right after independence, it wasn't some neat, highly organized master plan. It was purely an ad hoc arrangement. And this resulted in a total administrative nightmare. You had these haphazardly grown provinces filled with massive disparities. The states were literally just tossed into 4 basic buckets: Part A, B, C, and D states. It was incredibly messy, and it pretty much ignored the complex multilingual reality of the subcontinent. And you can really see the tension building on this timeline. The public desperately wanted states organized by language, but the leadership pushed back hard. In 1948, the Dar Commission said no, organized by administrative convenience, not language. Later that year, the high-profile JVP committee, which even included Prime Minister Nehru, also rejected the linguistic basis. But the people just wouldn't take no for an answer. Massive public pressure, along with some really tragic protests, finally forced the creation of Andhra in 1953 as the very first linguistic state. And that broke the dam. By December 1953, realizing this was now inevitable, the government appointed the State Reorganization Commission. Which brings us to Section 4, the 1956 reorganization. With the creation of Andhra forcing their hand, the old ABCD system was basically doomed. It was time for a massive overhaul. This entire overhaul was orchestrated by the State Reorganization Commission, headed up by Justice Fazl Ali, K.M. Panikkar, and H.N. Kunzru, and they made a super pragmatic decision: abolish that clunky fourfold classification completely. Crucially, they decided to balance these intense linguistic demands with basic administrative logic and national security. They knew it couldn't just be about language alone. The result? The monumental States Reorganization Act of 1956. Armed with those massive Article 3 powers we just talked about, Parliament completely redrew the map of India, tearing down the old borders and establishing 14 brand new primary states. And right alongside those 14 primary states, the Act also established 6 centrally administered union territories, basically to handle strategically or politically unique regions. Just take a moment to look at this sweeping new landscape, from Andhra Pradesh and Assam to Bombay, Kerala, and Punjab, alongside union territories like Delhi and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. I mean, this was an unprecedented geographical engineering feat. Millions of people woke up in newly named, newly bordered states, fundamentally born from the mighty ink of Parliament. Finally, Part 5, Unity versus Regionalism. Because reorganizing a massive, super diverse nation by language, that is a serious double-edged sword. Let's look at the lasting consequences of this shift. On one hand, linguistic states fostered incredible cultural unity. Think about it. Before 1956, administration was largely in English, which most everyday people just didn't understand. Post-1956, administration shifted to vernacular languages, empowering local communities and promoting regional culture. But on the flip side, it definitely hindered the development of a single national language. And worse, it sparked a really narrow, dangerous kind of regionalism. It gave birth to this son of the soil concept, fueling divisive, hyper-local political slogans. It basically created a new kind of internal tribalism. Now, what's fascinating is that the architects actually saw this coming, just as Fazl Ali's commission foresaw the exact danger of extreme localism, so they baked in specific administrative safeguards. To stop states from becoming totally isolated linguistic silos, they mandated that at least one-third of all India Services officers stationed in a state had to be from outside that state. And on top of that, at least one-third of a state's high court judges also had to be appointed from the outside. These were literal structural checks designed to ensure the overarching fabric of the union didn't tear apart. We've seen the raw power of Article 3, and we've walked through the immense historical pressure that completely redrew the map. So I want to wrap up this explainer by leaving you with this thought. Knowing the deep, ongoing friction between regional identity and national unity, does organizing destructible states by local culture ultimately threaten the nation with division? Or, by actually giving those local cultures a formalized voice and an administrative boundary, is it the true secret to keeping India's overarching union indestructible? Thank you so much for exploring this with us today, and keep questioning the map.